Hello. So, on today's episode of Tit Talk, I am going to talk about what has been on my heart lately as I've been growing and transforming and evolving and healing my relationship with my inner feminine as well as my inner masculine. And I share this here in Pussy Church today because I feel that it is relevant to many women. Um, And yeah, here it goes. So I was thinking about my husband and we both have gone through a lot of evolution, and we've both been doing a lot of self-healing and self-work and improving how we communicate with one another. And we've been doing work that falls under generational healing and cycle breaking. And it's like when I think about like generational healing and cycle breaking, like it's lifelong work. Like if you're just starting to understand that you're a cycle breaker, like be prepared to be in it for the long haul because cycle breaking, it happens through self-awareness of your like self and your how you behave in ways your ancestors might have, as well as epigenetic awareness. And then if you're gonna be a parent, you also kinda gotta be aware of your partner's stuff too, right? Which Chris and I do want to be parents. And so it's like just been really sitting on me like how grateful I am to have married the person that I married. Like we don't have it all figured out, first and foremost. And actually, I've held back on talking about our relationship for a while because I felt like I wasn't qualified to talk about what it is to be married. Um, which is really silly because I'm married, right? Thank you to my friend, you know who you are, that said that I was qualified because I am married. That gave me the confidence that I needed, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate you seeing me and holding space for me to come to this place of vulnerability here on TikTok. And with Chris and I, like we don't have it all figured out. We don't. Like I was raised by a grandparent that was divorced, and she never fully healed from her divorce, right? And then I had a biological mom that was more like a sister, very disorganized attachment style between her and I, and my mom and I, and definitely caused me to develop complex feelings and ways of navigating relationships and attachment styles and stuff, and even definitely has caused me to display CPTSD. Um, and with Chris, he was raised by two parents that are still together. I think they've been together over 40 years, but divorce runs throughout his family's history as well. And his family tends to like sweep things under the rug. There tends to be a bit of bypassing and toxic positivity and minimizing. And in my family, there's definitely minimizing and bypassing and sweeping things under the rug. So we're both working through similar things at different angles because we're obviously different people, right? And we do this work with the goal of better loving each other and unifying and surrendering to love because we decided to commit our lives to one another, but also so that way we could prepare ourselves to be parents to a child that doesn't have to work through as much inner chaos as we had to related to like our family trees. And while we're doing all this work here and now, it's like the work doesn't stop when we have a kid. It's going to continue when we have a kid with like raising the kid, holding the kid in their feelings, figuring out how to um, implement consequences when our kid misbehaves, figuring out how to have conversations about relationships with our kid. Like it's just ongoing process with generational healing and cycle breaking, especially when you bring a kid into the mix. Um, and thinking about that unborn child, we both definitely want our child to have a love and a respect for women. If it's a little boy, we want him to respect girls in their entirety. And if it's a little girl, we want her to respect herself in her entirety. Um, and that's important to us. And that importance has begun to really develop as I've been healing my relationship with my inner feminine. I've been on a journey of healing my relationship with my pussy for like the last year. And then for the last couple of years, I've been on a journey of healing my relationship with my menstrual cycle and getting myself back into the cycles and rhythms of nature and seasons. And I've been very vulnerable and transparent in this journey with Chris because he's the one who holds space for me a lot. And in the beginning, Chris didn't really know how to hold space for me. And I didn't really know what I needed for him to hold space with me for me because nobody taught me how to heal my feminine. Nobody taught me how to ask for my needs to be met. Nobody taught me it was okay to have my needs met or it was okay to request to have my needs met. And Chris wasn't really taught about his own needs, let alone meeting someone else's needs, you know? And he wasn't taught about space holding because his family, they all tend to be like storytellers, which storytelling is beautiful, but at the same time, it's like taking stories and like storytelling all the time takes away from actually being able to listen and hear a person, right? Which makes it hard for you to hold space. Or like if someone's sharing something that happened to them and it's painful, and then you relate to it, sometimes that's kind of invalidating to the person because like they're just in their pain. They don't care that you went through it in that moment. They just want to be heard. And sometimes when you relate, it's invalidating. And even when I was doing like studies on like narcissism, it can be a little bit narcissistic because it's like if you're unable to relate to this person's story, then their experience is invalid to you, um, which then makes everything about how you perceive, right? And so it's important to find this balance between like storytelling and relating and conversation and communication and silence and stillness. Like communication is an art, it really is, and it's very multi-layered. And so with Chris, like his family always storytelling and people relating and talking over each other or talking about each other, like it just like he wasn't necessarily the most equipped for holding space for me because he wasn't taught how to do it. And then I grew up pretty much like isolated in solitude because my mom liked to be alone a lot, and so like I didn't get to watch her interact with people. And like I only heard her stuff, you know, so like then I thought like only my stuff mattered. And so like he and I both have had to go to therapy, and it's been a mixture of like talk therapy as well as brain spotting. And then I also did pussy boot camp with Mama Gina and learned about like somatic releases through swamping. And then spring cleaning has been a powerful tool for me in actualizing, acknowledging, and getting stuff out, which if I can actualize and acknowledge and get stuff out within myself, it creates a space within me to hold space for myself, which means I could then hold space for the other person, being Chris or whoever. Um, and so anyways, it's been like an ongoing learning process for us. And at this point, we've been together 4 years. We've been married for about 2 years, I think, or almost 2 years. I can't remember now. Um, and I'm just so grateful for his willingness to learn, to grow with me, and his willingness to shed um, identities and ways of behaving and believing that weren't serving him or our relationship or our shared vision of starting a family together. And it's just so important. Like, there's a lot of people that get caught up in feminism and supporting women that they kind of forget to appreciate man and the masculine, which it's like, if like we're like not wanting to be part of the patriarchy, but then you don't want to go to the extreme of like just totally excluding men and hating men and disregarding them and like making them feel less than either, because then you're doing exactly what you stand against, right? Or what you oppose, which is why you got into feminism in the first place. If you're a woman watching this. So it's like important to respect the masculine, and especially the masculines that are like showing up to hold space for the feminine, because the feminine is about like sensuality and flow and rest and relaxation and play and pleasure and creation, right? And and the patriarchal programs and constructs that are all over society, it's really hard for the feminine to come out to play or be sensual or be creative and feel safe because, like, let's face it, at the end of the day, most women have like either a subconscious or conscious fear that they could fall prey to a man because men are stronger than us. And I mean, there's all kinds of crimes against women. And women have barely started regaining, or women have barely started getting rights here in the US. And in some places, they just still don't have rights, right? And so, like, the collective of women, we all basically live in a world where we are the prey and the men are the predators. However, that doesn't mean we can't hold space for those men that want to hold space for us to be in our feminine. And to do that, we have to acknowledge those men and we have to revere those men and we have to um, have gratitude and appreciation for those men as they hold space for us to create, to explore. Like, I am so grateful that Chris, like, went to New Mexico to replenish our bank account so we could play catch up, didn't shame me or guilt me at all for not starting a job right away in Florida, even though our cost of living is more out here. Instead, he's like, you need to rest and take your time and study your classes and work on creating content and getting your business established and changing your name. And he went into that provider role so that he could hold space for me. See, it makes me want to cry. So that he could hold space for me to be in my feminine in this safe container, to reinvent myself, to learn myself, to expand into my true essence, you know? And I'm so grateful for that. And it's just really humbling and heart opening to be part of a relationship that nourishes me so. And I'm so grateful for our soul connections. And um, I don't think it's okay for women to bash men. I think y'all need to also understand like balance. And I'm not saying like Chris has to be the provider for the rest of my life and provide for me so I could like raise 8 kids for him or something like that. But it's also like he's providing the space for me through being the provider so that I can heal my feminine, which brings balance to the collective, which brings healing to the collective, which is an input of love to the women collective. And that's a really beautiful thing to experience and to witness. And on top of that, one day, yeah, he is going to be the provider when I have a kid. And one day he's going to provide that same space for our child, whether it's a boy or a girl, to respect the feminine. And that's a beautiful thing as well. Um, and so I'm very thankful for the dynamic that Chris and I have. And we both spend a lot of time by ourselves, and people kind of think we're weird sometimes, I think, but like it doesn't matter because we're not here to be part of what has become normalized, which is like having women be barefoot in the kitchen, birthing a bunch of kids, or what is becoming part of the norm, which is women fighting for equality and women's rights. But really, what a lot of women are fighting for is to have man's rights, which has to do with the masculine. They're not fighting to be in their creativity and sensuality and play and sexuality. They're fighting to hustle and have pay raises and this and that, which that stuff is important and valid, but it's like that is of the masculine. And I'm so grateful to be married to a man that has held so much space for me to recognize my masculine and my feminine traits. And hi, Tumbas. What's up? And I'm so grateful to see him starting to balance his masculine and feminine traits. And this has just really been on my heart because I don't know, like I feel like people sometimes judge Chris and I too, because like my mom keeps going on about like, but you're gonna get a job, right? And she's the older generation, and so like that's what she's used to. And then like we had a toxic friend that's no longer in our life who was like irritated that Chris was holding space for me to not work. And we have a shared bank account, which no one taught us how to have a shared bank account either. It's been a learning process. And thankfully I feel like we've gotten through like the hump of it. But it took a lot to get there, and then, like, we have another person in our life that, no, actually, it was the same one. It was a friend that's no longer a friend, but, like, he was like, "Well, what kind of job are you gonna work, like, so that you can pay the bills?" And I was like, "I don't know yet, because 'cause I'm kinda trying to get out of the food industry. I wanna do something different." And I was like, "Haven't really thought about it yet." And then he's like, "Well, ideally." And I was like, "Well, ideally, my business is gonna provide the bills, and then I can start a family and have my business take care of my family and I, and have a work from home schedule that provides me, like, the abundance of time for child, for husband, and for myself that I'd like to have, as well as time that is needed for business and for writing and creativity and self-care." Um, and then he was like, "Well, yeah, yeah, but, like," and then he's like, "How much are your sessions?" And I told him, and he's like, "Well," and, like, he just tried to kinda, like, belittle and deflate and minimize the ambitions that I have as a woman. And this is, like, a friend that's no longer a friend, who really hates women, and, like, totally stands for, like, toxic masculinity. And so being in his presence when this conversation was going on was really eye-opening and just made me feel even that much more grateful for Chris, because Chris has never, like, shamed me for my business or my ambition or my goals. Like, yeah, it made him uncomfortable because he has two parents that worked and paid bills together, and he's never been taught how to be a provider. But at the same time, he still stepped into it and allowed his faith and curiosity to be bigger than his fear, just like I allowed my faith and curiosity to be bigger than my fear by stepping into it too, because I was raised by a single workaholic mother. So, like, that's been something that's been ingrained in me that I've been working to uncondition and unlearn. Um, and yeah, it's such a learning experience. I'm curious to see what we've learned at this time next year. And if you are a woman married to a man holding space for you as you heal your feminine, like, make sure you um thank him and show him an appreciation, whether it be through, like, cute love notes or through, like, touch or quality time or whatever your love languages are, your person. Um and if you're a man that happens to be watching this with, like, your woman, make sure you constantly provide her reassurance that she's safe and secure as she explores these parts of herself, because these are the parts that have been repressed and oppressed for centuries in women. This runs deep in ourselves, deep in our bones, and it's scary to go in these places because that fear has been stored in our DNA. And as we go in and unlock it, the fear will purge from time to time. And it's so important to have that reassurance and safety, like, that the man, the partner, loves his partner and is open to holding space for her. And it doesn't, like, everybody's holding space is different. Maybe you guys need to communicate and have boundaries. Be like, "Hey, babe, like, I'm having a hard time with bills right now. I'd love to continue holding space for you. However, would you be able to work, like, 2 days a week and I can, like, hold space here and there in other ways?" Or, like, you guys can totally talk about it too. That's the beautiful thing about having a dynamic like this. Um, Whatever it is that you may have, just openly communicate from the heart and nourish it and remain open to love. Catch yourself being defensive. Do the work needed to surrender that defensiveness and let love in. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable, especially if we've picked it up from our ancestors, but it's so worth it. And it's so beautiful to be able to birth things as a woman into reality through having your partner hold space for you to do it. And by birth things, I don't mean just like little humans. I mean, that's beautiful too, but, like, birthing dreams that benefit both of you. Like, that's so cool. And it's just like, with Chris, even when we moved to Florida, like, I did so much of the envisioning work. I did a lot of the emotional work, the shadow work, the mental work. And I'm very grateful because he gave me full credit for that, which I am an air sign. I'm an Aquarius. And so I tend to be very mental and in the head, and, like, I can envision because that's like my dominant stuff. And even how I communicate is very Aquarian because my Mercury is in Aquarius. And my moon is in Libra. So I'm very air and mental with how I process and go about things. And he's a Taurus, he's very earthy. Um, and so it's nice because being earthy, like, he goes about bringing things to fruition through the physical, like providing the physical means, as I provide the mental, emotional means and do the energy work and esoteric work and self-healing work around that. And it's how we work as a team. And that's another thing is like being married, you do have to learn how to work as a team, especially if like you're bringing in this new way of being and loving and being in matrimony with one another by having healthy communication and working through ancestral shit and cycle breaking. Um, you do have to work as a team, and it might not come naturally at first. It's kind of like when teams first start, you all kind of got to figure out each other's like strong moves, weak moves, and all that. And then you guys can work together in unison and create wonderful wins together, right? And then you get to go through the losses together also, but you do it in solidarity with one another. And so, yeah, like recognizing the strong suits of your partner and recognizing your strong suits and complementing each other. Like that's important too. And yeah, I think that's what I got for Tit Talk. This is just me talking things out, sounding things out for myself, and perhaps giving you little aha moments in your own journey. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you may be. Aho.